Hi, good evening. It's 6:30 on Tuesday, the 10th. I'd like to welcome you to Understanding Your Taxes class. I'm Township Administrator Andy Rose. We taught this class in the spring. I don't remember if it was March or April, but time's flying really fast. But with the sexennial reevaluation, we've gotten a lot of calls and questions at Town Hall, and I know that the county has gotten a lot of questions. I won't answer questions for the county auditor or treasurer, but I'll certainly answer questions for the township perspective. But I just thought it would be good. I've refreshed the class a little bit, just so that folks understand how taxes work, property taxes work, and also to give a better understanding of where your tax dollars go, and also to touch on the impact of the sexennial reevaluation for our residents. So I'm going to cover some basic definitions and terminology. I'm going to talk about the impact of House Bill 9. How many of you have heard of House Bill 920? Okay, and it's super, super important, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize the impact of it. It's pretty neat. And then we're going to talk about the breakdown of tax dollars and how that relates to Concord Township across the 3 taxing districts. Because if you remember, Concord Township we have 3 zip codes, 3 school districts, 3 taxing districts. It makes it a lot of fun because you have Riverside School District, which is a taxing district in Concord Township. Hi, good evening. We have the Mentor School District, and we have the Chardon School District. Sir, I'm going to hand you one of these, just makes it easier to read and so forth. All right, thanks. I'm Andy Rose, the Township Administrator. So, we're going to, like I said, we're going to cover basic definition terminology. We're going to cover House Bill 920. We're going to talk about the breakdown of tax dollars in Concord Township. I'm going to cover and talk about some myths or common comments that we receive from residents. And then questions at the end for anything. And feel free during this presentation to ask any questions as we go along. Sometimes it's easier to catch them while they're fresh in your head instead of waiting to the end. And then at the end, when we get the questions, I open that up for any questions about Concord Township, whether it's rec, police services, fire, roads, anything that's going on in the township. So. A couple of definitions that you've probably heard that are related to tax bills. One is millage or a mill. It's simply a unit of measurement that they use to determine property tax rates. By definition, 1 mill equals $1 per $1,000 of assessed value. The easiest way to remember a mill is 1 mill is $35 per 100,000. So if somebody puts a 1 mill levy on the ballot, that would be charged at $35 per 100,000. So if somebody put a 2 mill levy on the ballot, that would be $70 per $100,000. And then inside millage, this is mostly what's affected by the sexennial reevaluation. Inside millage is unvoted on, unvoted on millage. Right now in Concord Township, both school districts have 4.8 mills of inside millage. The township has 3 mills of inside millage. The county has 1 mill, and Metro Parks has 0.1 mil. So the total is 5.9 mils of inside, 8.9 mils of inside millage. 4.8, 3, 1, and 0.1. These are done by state constitution, and they are, again, unvoted on, and every taxing district, county, school, city, village, and Township has that. Outside millage is probably what you're the most familiar with. That's outside of the state constitution, which is why it's called outside millage. That's what you vote on at the ballot box. So when the schools come for a levy, when the township comes for a levy, when any of the taxing authorities throughout the county come to you and ask you to approve something at the ballot box, that is considered outside millage. The majority of your taxes fall into the outside millage category that's voted on by the citizens of the community. A couple other ones. This has come up lately with the sexennial reevaluation. One is market value. How many of you got one of these? Everybody should have gotten one of these at their house. The infamous auditor's love letter. This is my personal one. I didn't poach one off anybody else. But it's got the magic number with 2024 value, and that is the market value. And that's what they use to measure the value by which a property is taxed. There is assessed value, which is 35% of the market value. That's done by the tax commissioner of the state of Ohio. I don't like assessed value as a way to calculate your taxes. It's a more complicated mathematical formula. And the easiest way to calculate taxes is utilizing the market value. So if your house is worth $300,000 and somebody puts on a 1 mil levy, okay, so 1 mil equals $35, remember? So you would take that 35, and that's per 100,000. So you would take the 35 times 3 for the 300,000, and that gives you, that means that levy, should it pass, will be $105 a year. Okay? $105 a year for a 1 mil levy. That's the quickest, easiest way to calculate. So if your house is $348,000, 3.48 is the quickest way to do that. One of the unique things about Concord Township, and they're all over the state, but it's special to us, is we have, anybody heard of the JED? It's a Joint Economic Development District. It was established 2008 when the hospital, if you remember, it used to be Lake East in downtown Painesville, and they shuttered that building, and then they built Tri-Point here right across the street. When they did that, they formed a Joint Economic Development District with the city of Painesville. It was a way for Concord Township to pick up some additional revenue to help offset some of the infrastructure costs and some of the added traffic issues that came along with the hospital. And because we were allowed to utilize the city of Painesville's taxing authority, they get 25% of the income tax. And it's only for a particular area. Right now we have 7 businesses that are in the JED. There's Tri-Point Hospital, the UH Medical Clinic, the Rainbow Building that's next to the hospital. Stephen Douglas Corporation, that's a manufacturing company back on Discovery. Ordnance Technology, which is on Wellness Way. And then Sheets is our newest member. And then Vista Springs, that's assisted living. Concord Village, skilled nursing and rehab center. And then coming soon, and I'm excited about the Little Mountain Creamery and Johnny's Car Wash. Those are over on Cryle. I think they're supposed to open at the end of this month, was the last I heard. And then Ralph Victor Construction, which is on Cryle. He's going to be building a building at Cryle and Hunting Lake, and he's moving his offices into that building, and then he's got several other tenant spaces that he's working on leasing to businesses. So those will be going into the JED. But it comes in, businesses and the employees pay a 1.75% income tax. Do any of you work outside of Concord Township? So you pay 2% more than likely to whatever community you work in. Same principle here. It's a 1.75% income tax deducted from the employees and then also from the net profit business tax. And that brings in, in any given year right now, between $800,000 and $850,000, full disclosure. That's our 75% share after administrative costs. We're still continuing to grow this. This is managed by a separate board. There are 2 members that are appointed by Painesville City. There are 2 members that are appointed by Concord Township. And then the chair is elected by the other 4 members for a 5-person board. And they manage the JED and the businesses, and they are great partners with us in working on economic development and trying to recruit and bring other businesses in. So that's part of the tax structure in Concord Township. And then this is the one, everybody's most familiar with right now, the sexennial reevaluation. That is state mandated. They have to evaluate every property and update the appraised value for tax purposes. It happens every 6 years. Every property is personally visited. Information and values are verified. How many of you got the questionnaire that they sent out? Yeah. There was I talked to the county auditor a week ago when I was preparing the class, and I was curious. Only 36% of the folks in Lake County returned that questionnaire.
Well, that's the whole county?
Yeah, that's countywide. 36% according to the county auditor. In between the sexennial reevaluations, they do a smaller reevaluation that's based on real estate sales, and that's the triennial update. There's usually adjustments that are, it's based on real estate sales that have taken place within the county. It's typically a much smaller evaluation and adjustment to your property value. Keep in mind that with either one of these, you have the ability, and I believe they spell it out on here. So if you don't agree with the number they gave you, hey, I think this is too high, there's paperwork you can fill out and submit to the county auditor's office. Or if you think your value is too low, you can submit something and say, hey, I think my property is worth more. I don't know that anybody's ever done that. But that option does exist. This is the most important part, I think, of understanding your taxes. And then the second most important is the allocation of the tax dollars. But House Bill 920 was passed in 1976 in order to keep outside millage levies from increasing. Remember, inside millage is baked into the state constitution. Outside millage is voted on by the people. In 1976, and I was a kid, but I remember this because my grandfather had poor eyesight, and I would have to read him the Plain Dealer and the Cleveland Press. That was one of my chores. Ford was president because this was before the '76 election, and he was walking around with his whip inflation now because we were experiencing record inflation. Sounds kind of familiar, I think. But the state was getting railed on, the elected officials, about property taxes being out of control because housing values were going up with the inflation, property taxes were going up at an equivalent rate. So the state legislature in 1976 passed a House Bill 920, which freezes outside millage property taxes. So when you go to the ballot box, you will see something on the ballot, and it will say, local community wants you to pass a 2 mil levy for roads and road maintenance, and it will cost $70 per 100,000, and it will bring in $2.1 million. That $2.1 million is actually the most important part of that ballot language, because what it does is, in this example, it says, the example is in November of 19, a community passed a 2.9 mil levy. That levy generates approximately $2.4 million annually. Okay? That's the most that that community can receive. It can't receive 2.5 million, it can't receive 2.41 million. So what happens is, as values increase and other properties are developed, housing developments go in, the effective millage gets reduced because your property goes up, you're no longer paying 2.9 mils because that would give the community too much money. So what they do is they reduce it, and it's called effective millage rate. And in this example, in 5 years, it drops from 2.9 to 2.23. And as values continue to go up and other housing developments and businesses come in, that effective millage rate will continue to go down. So you will actually pay a little bit less on this particular levy. It does not bring in additional dollars. On the same token, every time you go to the ballot, it probably feels like you're voting on something other than a candidate. But I mean, it feels like, oh, somebody's always asking for a levy. Well, if a levy's 5 years old, if a levy's 10 years old, and the organization can't keep up with costs, then they've got to replace that, or they've got to put a new money levy on from time to time in order to keep up with costs, because their revenue stays flat, because it doesn't increase. Does everybody get what I'm saying?
That's an effective rate.
That's the effective rate.
Does your taxes drop?
They're supposed to.
Okay.
Yep. And we're going to get into why it doesn't feel like your taxes drop in another couple of slides, because I anticipated this thought process. So, full disclosure, this is my personal tax bill. And the excerpts used in this presentation are from my personal tax bill. I did that so I didn't pick somebody's random house and somebody thought, oh my gosh, that's my, you know. So this is actually my tax bill, and the gross tax rate millage is 127.96 mils. That's an incredible amount of millage. But because of growth, values increasing, my reduction factor is 0.5. They carry it out too many decimal points for my liking. That's a lot of nonsense. But the bottom line is my effective tax rate is 63.07 mils. So if you look on the left side of your tax bill, when you look at your tax bill, the second line is the reduction factor, and that you got your gross taxes, which is your tax bill as voted on. Then you have your reduction factor, which brings in the reduction from effective millage, and that gives you your subtotal. So I'm actually reducing my tax bill by $4,455, leaving a subtotal of $4,300 and change. So more than half of my tax bill gets reduced, or my tax bill gets reduced by more than half due to the rules of House Bill 920. And then there's other things like, you know, I don't operate a business out of my house, so you get a non-business credit. If you're living in the home that you live in, you get an owner occupancy credit. It's very small, but if you own, you know, you would get that in your primary home, but if you own a rental property, you would not get that. And I don't qualify for homestead exemption, but this is important because when you, prior to 1976, and I know that was a long time ago. I mean, I was younger than I am now. How's that?
You know, you would pay, if they hadn't enacted House Bill 920, and not all states do this, I would be paying $8,787 instead of $4,331 before the other deductions. So House Bill 920 is your friend. And, you know, it's very important. And that's where the effective millage rates come in. So, I mentioned at the beginning, Concord Township's also a little bit unique. We have 3 zip codes, 3 school districts, so therefore we have 3 taxing districts. We have Chardon in the south, we have Riverside, and then we have Mentor on the west side of the township. So, for Riverside, Mentor, and Chardon respectively, these are the gross tax rates in mills. So, and then the effective tax rate due to House Bill 920, 57.3, 57.3, 56.8. So they're all very, I mean, they're within a hand grenade of each other. They're very close. And then now we're going to talk about where these numbers come from. But this is the overall tax rate that you're paying in Concord Township, depending on which district you live in. So then we go to the next side. This is Concord Township's snapshot of the taxes paid to Concord Township. So Concord Township receives 3 mills of inside millage that's not voted on, the constitutional millage. And we break that out. We send 1.4 of those mills to the general fund. That takes care of administration, town hall, zoning, finance, HR. It takes care of all this building, recreation, and then we have 3 parks, the ball fields, all those types of things. Then the remaining inside millage, the 1.6 mills, goes to roads and bridges for maintenance of our infrastructure of roads and bridges and ditches and all the things associated with that. Snowplow removal is part of that. The large trucks that we use to plow come into play in there, and our equipment that's associated with that. Then you move into the outside millage. These are the ones that are voted on by the residents, right here. So we have the fire protection levy. It started off at 2.7 mils. It's currently collecting at 2.04. And that will go down after the reevaluation to a lower amount. Then you have a road levy. These two with the asterisk are continuous, and I'll cover that in just a second. But you have a road levy that started at 2 mils. That's currently collecting at 1.53 mils. And we haven't touched that one in a very, very long time, because this, coupled with the one that rose with the property values, is keeping roads and bridges whole right now. Then you have safety forces. This is primarily for police and fire. That started off as 4 mils, and that's currently collecting at 3.02. This was voted on in 2015, 9 years ago, and so yeah, it's dropped a whole point, if you will, in less than 10 years. And then we have the fire station bond levy, which is tied to the bond that financed the construction of new Fire Station 1. That started off at 0.6, and it's currently effective at 0.53. I would expect that one's going to go to the low 4s, high 3s, low 4s to high 3s after the reevaluation is done. So those are the taxes that apply just to Concord Township. Now, I wanted to compare this because we like everybody to understand where we are in the pecking order. There are 5 townships in Lake County: Concord Township, Leroy Township, Perry Township, Painesville Township, and Madison Township. Currently, this is what we spend on safety in mills, 5 mills, 7, 10, 13, and 16. To be fair to Madison Township, they have their own police department, which is why they're probably the highest at 16.4 mils. And then the total tax rate, if I went back one slide, the effective millage rate equals 10.12, and then Leroy's at 12, Perry's at 17, Painesville's at just a hair under 18, and then Madison's just a hair under 21 for their taxing rates in their respective communities. This is just the township taxes. It does not factor in the other agencies that I'm getting ready to touch on here in a minute that affect your tax bill. Any questions so far? Okay. So then we move into the county piece. The county has the general fund, which collects 1 mil of inside millage, which is why the actual tax rate does not change. But then you get into the other taxing entities, and you've probably seen these at the ballot box from time to time. You have the Adams Board, which is the alcohol, drug addiction, mental health services. Then you have developmental disabilities. A lot of folks just call that Deepwood in Lake County. You have the Narcotics Agency, Children's Services, the Forensic Crime Lab, Senior Citizens Levy, Lake Metro Parks has a levy, and Lakeland Community College has tax levies. This is what the voted on millage was, except for remember the county general fund is fixed at 1 because that's inside millage, but all the rest is outside millage. So you'll note that all of them are less than what was voted on. So it's 1.6 to 1.2, 4.9 to 3.5, and so on down the line. So the effective millage rate for county-wide stuff is 12.92. Does anybody here work for the schools? Okay. So, school districts, remember we have 3. Because the county, all the ones in the previous slide and the township ones, it doesn't matter which one of the taxing district, this is where your taxing district changes your tax bill ever so slightly. Remember, they're all pretty close, but there are some differences. So the bulk of the township lives in Riverside or Mentor. There's a very small section that's got the Chardon School District, but they all have general fund. Riverside has debt from when they built the 2 new elementary schools, one of those in Concord on State Route 608. Riverside and Mentor have emergency levies, and then all 3 of them have permanent improvement levies. But if you look at the effective millage rate versus the voted on millage rate, Mentor's or Riverside's has dropped by half. Mentor's has dropped by more than half. Chardon's has dropped by well more than half. But those are the effective millage rates for each one of those communities. And then the last group are your libraries, vocational schools, and then there's a financing district. So with libraries, you've got the Riverside side, that's Morley Library. That's a 1 mil effective at 0.77. Mentor is 2 mils effective at 1.46. And then Chardon Library System is gross tax rate 1.7, and it's at 1.61. Joint vocational school, I have to research this some more. Somebody asked me this question this morning, and I didn't have the answer off the top of my head, but there's some provision in the law, I believe, that the vocational schools, what's voted on stays. It's unique, and I'll have to do more research on it. But it's 1.5 mils for Auburn, and Chardon feeds Auburn. Mentor does not feed Auburn Community Center, so they don't pay the Career Center, not Community Center, Career Center, I'm sorry. And then there's the Lake County Financing District. I don't know if anybody's heard about that. That goes back back to, I want to say the 80s, but Madison, I think it was Madison, Perry, Riverside, Fairport Harbor, and Painesville City schools formed a financing district, and they passed a levy a long time ago at 4.9. That's been renewed, I want to say, probably 5 or 6 times. And the effective millage rate now is at 1.92. I believe that's on the ballot for renewal this November, and it's at 1.92. It hasn't changed. So, to kind of bring everything together in a optometrist eye chart, if you will, you know, between, you got the county, township, school districts, libraries, career center, and then the school financing district. That's, you add all those up, that's where you come up with your, and the effective millage is outlined in yellow, and then we highlighted Concord Township in blue, and I think that showed up okay on the handouts, so you can see them, but, you know, the gross tax rate versus the actual tax rate. Actual tax rate is also known, that's the effective millage. It's dropped by, you know, pretty much almost half in the Riverside, and then Menor and Chardon, it's dropped by half. So, and that's House Bill 920 in action, for everybody's information. This is the other one that I try to drive home with our residents. We get the trustees, the fiscal officer, myself, members of the staff, we get phone calls. Hey, you know, we'd like to get new playground equipment. We would like to get additional pickleball courts. We would like to get our road repaved faster than, you know, you've got us in year 4 of a 5-year schedule. We'd like to have it done next year. It's not in the budget. And people come back and they say, well, all this tax money we're paying to the township, you know, I pay, and they blurt out whatever number they have, and so we take the time to explain, you know, 17.5 cents is what comes to Concord Township out of your tax dollar. So for every $1,000, we get $1, we get 176 to be exact. You know, schools and library, and I'm not knocking on schools and library or any other entity, but schools predominantly take the lion's share of the tax dollar, and then all the Lake County agencies rolled up take the second largest piece, and then the community takes the smallest piece. But this just gives a good picture of where your tax dollars end up in the pie. Any questions? So, this is what we talked about. The big myth. The township, we hear this all the time, the township should have plenty of money with all the new development. Right now, we have 2 new housing developments under construction. We have Ivy Ridge off of Girdle, just east of Cryle Road. And then we have Villas of Canterwood, which is going in. That's the one off Hoos at the old Locksterman farm. When those become established, there's no additional revenue that comes with those houses. There's additional inside millage, which is the 3 mills. But all the rest of those taxes, remember, we can't collect more than what was voted on when you went to the ballot box. I'm going to use a simple let's say one of the levies was $2 million. We cannot collect in excess of that $2 million. So as those houses get established, as additional businesses come into town and get established here in the township, that gets spread loaded and it lowers the effective millage rate. Ideally, you would think, well, that means over a cycle my taxes would go down. But if you look at the list of all the taxing entities throughout the county, every election cycle there's always somebody on the ballot. And so So the effective millage rate due to development may drop it down a quarter point. So you lose 0.25 on the effective millage, but this taxing entity that's countywide just passed a 0.5 new money levy. So that negates your point, you know what I mean? It negates it. So it doesn't necessarily equate to it's a reduction to you for the township portion, but it may not, depending on what the schools are doing, what the other taxing entities are doing with regard to what they have on the ballot. So it doesn't always equate to that, but it does lower your tax millage here in the township. We keep the same amount of money. So if we originally asked for $2 million, we're going to continue to get the $2 million, but you may pay a little bit less, you may pay a little bit less, you may pay a little bit less for us to get that money because there's more people paying into that pot from the new development that comes up. And then if your house went from $300,000 to $400,000, the effective millage rate's going to drop overall once we get we won't get those numbers probably until December from the county auditor. I think we're about 800, the total value of property in Concord Township is about $800 million. We might break $1 billion, maybe. High 900s, maybe break $1 billion. So that effective millage rate is going to come down, 15, 20%. So that's very possible. Now, sexennial reevaluation. This is the other one that we've heard a lot, and I think everybody's reading and listening more. Hey, my house value went up 30%. I can't afford a 30% increase in my tax bill. I can't afford to go from, $3,000 to $4,000 in my tax bill. Your tax bill won't go up percentage to percentage or dollar for dollar on your increase because House Bill 920 provides the credit. It only affects the inside millage. So I picked 2 houses randomly in Chardon's district, Riverside's district, Mentor's district, and I did a 30% increase in value. It comes out between 4.5% and 5% is the increased tax value. I'm giving you my personal example. This is my personal reevaluation. This is my tax bill, obviously before the reevaluation. I have a 47% increase on my home. That's what I got. I got a 47% increase on my personal residence. So I went from $196,000 to $289,000. So 289 is my new value. I calculated my taxes on my inside millage for my community, and my projected tax increase is $289.69 for the year, which is a 7.3% increase in my tax bill. I don't know what the reduction of outside millage, that may fluctuate it down a little bit. There are actually some houses in Concord Township where they were fairly new construction, so their increase was 10 to 12 to 13% because they were just constructed. Their tax bill may actually go down a little bit because their inside millage isn't going to go up hardly at all. And if the reduction factor on the outside millage from House Bill 920, they could see a very slight decrease in their taxes just because of the way they hit the cycle. So, we won't know the overall impact probably until December, when the auditor finishes all the because you have the reevaluations that are out, and now everybody's got time to appeal and question and submit their paperwork to the county auditor, and then they'll make a bunch of adjustments, and then they'll update the system again. And then I believe they mail you something saying, hey, after the reevaluation, you went from this amount to this amount, and then you go from there. So we won't know the full impact until the end of the year. But I guess my point here is, you know, my house went up 47%. My projected tax increase is 7.3%. I'm not trying to minimize anybody's tax bill or poo-poo anything, but my tax bill's not going up 47%. If you got a 30% increase, it's not going up 30%. I think it's going to go up around 4.5% to 5%. I expect that somebody who watches this class or attends one of the 4 sessions is going to call me and say, you know, I saw what you said in your class, my tax bill went up 5.15%. These are good ballpark numbers to give you an example of what this looks like. So that is the end of my presentation. That covers it in a nutshell. This class talks about our taxes as they stand right now. Now, if you want to know, and I have the notes from the previous class, if you would like, I can show you. This is how you calculate your increase. Everybody see that? Okay, so I have a total of 8.9 mils of inside millage, and Concord Township, Concord Township has 8.9 mils of inside millage. 4.8 from the schools, 1.1 from the county and metro parks, and then 3 from the township. So I take the 8.9 mils, and I take the 8.9, I multiply it by 35, it comes out to $311.50 per 100,000. I took my old value, I took $311.50, and I multiplied, that's per 100,000, so I multiplied the $311.50 by 1.96. So my old inside millage was $610.54. I took my new value, which is $289,000, so I multiplied 2.89. I multiplied 2.89 and 311.50, and that came out to $900.23. So that's an increase of $289.69. If I bounce that against my old tax bill, that's about a 7.3% increase. That does not take into consideration the reduction factor, which we won't know till the end of the year. But that gives you a ballpark. That's the math on how to figure that out. And a couple people have asked, and I've talked to them, I've explained it over the phone, and a couple people have come in, and we just get out a piece of paper and a pencil, and we'll calculate we'll help them. This is Andy Rose's ballpark estimate, but I think it's pretty close. So, questions about taxes, about, the other thing is, you know, this tax class is on what taxes look like today. Full disclosure, Concord Township has a fire levy on the ballot in November. The purpose of this class is not to get into that. The purpose of this class is the same as it was in March, which is to help people understand how the taxes work, the impact of House Bill 920, and then with the questions we got in the sexennial reevaluation, we dressed up the slides a little bit to factor in the impact of the sexennial reevaluation. So that's what's going on there. So any questions about anything, it could be anything about the township. I'm happy to answer anything you got. Okay, I'll be around for a few minutes if you want to talk offline. I thank you for coming. I have extra copies of the presentation if anybody wants to pass one to somebody else. My business cards are up here, so if you think of a follow-on question later, feel free to email me or call me. I'm happy to discuss this subject, you know, whatever's convenient for you. Yes, ma'am.
Could you just explain again what the financing district is? What is
Yeah,
that
the
used
financing
for?
district, the financing district, a group of school districts got together in order to pool resources, I think for some common things that they all share. And I don't know, I don't pretend to know what they are. And I wish Gary Placco was here. I have a very good relationship with all of our school districts, but Gary Placco and I talk, and as do myself and Bill Wade from Mentor Schools from time to time. But it's my understanding that the school districts, and I believe it's Madison, Perry, Riverside, Fairport, and Painesville City got together, and they formed a educational Lake County financing district to help support their schools. And so they have a board that manages that money, and then I believe it's doled out fairly, proportionately to those 5 districts. It's an extra source of revenue.
Or-
I don't know specifically what it's
I'm
for.
not really sure I understand what it's for.
Sure.
Versus what the school district.
Yeah, I would defer that question. Are you in Riverside or?
Riverside.
Yeah, I would defer that to Riverside CFO, Gary Placco.
Thank you.
Sure, and if you call me, you can grab my card and call me, I will get that, I will call Gary tomorrow, I will get that answer, I'm gonna keep it on my desk.
Okay.
So if you call me, I can give you that answer, and then if you want more information, I can send you
Yeah,
over
I'm just
to
curious of what
Mr. Placco.
is that money used for versus just the regular?
I will get that specific answer, and then if you wanna call me sometime tomorrow, I would say after lunch, that gives me time to get a hold of you. Mr. Placco, I'll get that answer
I
for
don't know
you.
if it'll be tomorrow. but-
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything township-wide? No? All right, well, thank you very much.